Hey guys, welcome back to a new edition of Music Theory Mondays. The last episode was on the tritone substitution. It was pretty basic. It was just an introduction. I will be going further in depth with that in the future. There's going to be countless examples of harmonic analysis in these episodes going forward. But I just want to lay out everything in a very basic way, just to give an introduction. So if you guys have been watching these videos up to this point and you find that you're confused or you're left with more questions than answers, just trust me, it'll all make sense in the end. I'm trying to lay this out in a very strategic way so that at the end of it all lines up and makes sense. With that said, the last episode was the tritone substitution, just a basic idea of what it is. Today I just want to expand on the tritone itself and just kind of explain what it is and why it's so powerful. So I'm going to put up on the screen the key of C, and the tritone away from the key of C would be an F sharp, because the tritone is 3 whole steps away from the root. Alright? And the root could be any note. The root is whatever your starting place is. It doesn't matter if it's C, E flat, G sharp, it doesn't matter. But we're going with C just to make this visually easy. So C is the root, and F sharp is the tritone. 3 whole steps away. C to D, 1 whole step. D to E, another whole step. And then E to F sharp is that 3rd whole step. Now, what makes the tritone so interesting is that it essentially splits the octave right down the middle. If you play a C to a G, that is the interval of a perfect fifth. And it's perfect because it sounds really well. It sounds really good. If you take that G and just drop it by a half step, going down you get to the F sharp, which I stated is the tritone. So C to F sharp is the tritone. The tritone is definitely the most dissonant and unsettling interval in music. And I'm just going to play you an example of that. Alright, first I'm going to play C to G. There you can hear just how perfectly consonant that sounds, right? Now if I take that G and bring it down a half step to the F sharp, that's your tritone. That tritone is not only the basis for the 5 chord, because when you have a 5 chord, and I will demonstrate this on screen so you guys can see it, but when you have a 5 chord, you have a root, which in this case is G, because we're in the key of C. The 5 chord is G7. You have the B, you have the D, and then you have the F. That is the 5 chord in the key of C. Now, what's interesting about this chord is that it contains 4 notes. Therefore, there's two note relationships making it up as a whole. The G to D, which is the 1 and 5, the 1st and 5th of the chord, that is a perfect fifth, right? And then the B to F, that's your tritone. Now if it were a B to an F sharp, that would sound good. That's another perfect fifth. But where it's B to F down a half step, so that's your tritone. So the dominant 7th chord, being the most active chord in music, it's the chord with the most tension. It's the chord that sets up the resolution to go back to the 1 chord. That's what all music is based on, tension and release, right? So in most songs, not all, but most, you'll typically see a 5 chord preceding the 1 chord to bring home the song or the progression. So that tritone is the meat and potatoes of the 5 chord. That is why the 5 chord is so powerful. So the tritone is huge in music. In fact, the tritone is also very present in metal and rock riffs. I'm going to do a whole rant on traditional theory versus heavy metal theory in the future, but just as kind of a little teaser for you, rock and metal don't typically use traditional chord progressions, but they do use intervals, and the intervals can kind of be seen as mini versions of chord progressions. So in a lot of rock and metal songs, the note that comes up a lot in those songs, in the riffs somewhere, is the tritone. Alright? And often it's the tritone that makes that given riff so damn awesome. Alright, and this is gonna, I will expand on this in the future. But I just wanted to go over the tritone, how it's made up. Again, it's the flat 5 from any given root, 3 whole steps away. It's the basis for the 5 chord, and we all know how important the 5 chord is. If you haven't seen all my videos stepwise, I have a video on the dominant 7th chord. I also have videos on the secondary dominant chords. It's the same idea. So, with the tritone, you get not only the most unstable chord relationship or note relationship, intervallic relationship, but you also get the money maker, right? Because without that 5 chord, without that tritone, without that flat 5 relationship between the two notes, the two most important notes within that 5 chord, other than the root, you don't get the tension. You don't get the build. Here's the other thing I was gonna say, and I will put this up on screen as well. When you have the 5 chord, the two notes that are causing the resolution out of the G, B, D, and F of the G7, the B, which is the third of the G7, is what's called the leading tone in the key of C. So again, we're in the key of C. G7's the 5 chord. B is the third of G7. And B is the leading tone of the C scale, meaning that it's a half step away from the root. There's your B, there's your C. You can almost feel the pull, right? So that is one of the reasons why the 5 chord G7 resolves back to C. The other reason is the F, that top note, that's a half step above the E. And of course the E is the third of the C chord, which is the 1 chord. So you have two notes, the B and the F, that's your tritone, that want to resolve. The F comes lower to the E, and the B goes higher to the C. And there you get your 5 to 1. Your tritone to your resolution. The very reason music sounds good back home. So between my explanation, the sound, and what I've put on the screen, I hope this makes sense. Again, this is just an expansion on the tritone, which is so important, and I will be doing countless other videos with different critiques on riffs and motifs and chord progressions in the future. If anybody has any questions, comments, please like, subscribe, and as always, have a great day.